You may be seated. As you're seated, the list of biblical signs of Christ's return will not actually be full-blown until the tribulation. So I just want you to understand that these things will not be going cataclysmic until that 7-year period of the time of Jacob's troubles. But each of the signs of Christ's return, he said, are trends. Jesus described this as when you see them begin to happen. So they have a beginning and they start amplifying and going toward a crescendo. Each of these trends we see speeding up in the tribulation. They get faster and faster. The last seconds of the countdown clock of Christ's return are clicking down, because as these trends begin, as they're all in place, then at the moment that Christ decides, he said it's an hour known only to the Father, he is going to launch this, and the whole process is going to take place. Now, exactly where he pulls us out of the world in this process, as I said last time, there's nothing specifically that says in the Bible that Russia will not invade Israel while the church is on the earth. There's no specific timetable for that Iranian-Russian invasion. So there are some things that we are just expectant. We don't know when they're going to happen. But each day, this picture that Christ painted, it's getting clearer. In fact, if you read some of the old, like Matthew Henry, the great Bible teacher of centuries ago, when he looked at this, he tried to see this in the monarchy of England. He tried to see this in some of Europe, but he couldn't. And if you look at succeeding generations or even previous generations to him, as I said, Luther and Calvin both looked at these passages and they just couldn't see it. They thought it was in the past, maybe the Roman emperors or something, but they just couldn't see it. But each of these signs were captured by the apostles and prophets between 2,000 and 3,500 years ago. Remember, 2,000 years ago, Jesus said these words, and Matthew and Luke and Mark wrote them down. But they were quoting what was spoken earlier by the major and minor prophets, and even all the way back to Moses. So all of these signs, as it were captured between 20 and 35 centuries ago. But the amazing thing is, now they're happening in our lifetime, what they talked about. We are the first and the only generation to see all of this happen. In all of history, only our generation has seen every one of these events starting to unfold. All of them, yet to be completed prophecies, fit within not only the 7 major events, the rapture, the judgment seat of Christ, the tribulation, the second coming of Christ, the millennium, and the great white throne, and eternity. Not only do they fit within that, but also Jesus described them in a broader sense than just these big events we know about, these signposts. He also described what I like to call the signpost or the signs of these trends. And so, before I go through the 7 major events, and I'm going to actually have you tonight, if you've never done this, mark them in your Bible. Mark in your Bible where it talks about the rapture. Mark in your Bible where it talks about the judgment seat of Christ. And actually, if you're a Bible marker, you should have a pen. I actually write these at the top in the margins of my Bible, so that every time I come through there, I go, oh yeah, that's right. That's where that one is. That's where you describe, the millennium's described, or the great white throne, or whatever. So that all of us, we should be able to, on our own, with just a Bible, defend what we believe. And that's what's so important, and that's a part of our responsibility. But before I survey those big events and help you get them clearly in your mind, I want to share with you the signs, the signposts, these trends, the ones I say that we're the first generation to experience them. Here, and by the way, this is just my list. There are different ways that you can look at this, but this is just my list, and I'll read them off to you, what Jesus described. Number 1, Jesus talked about a time of global travel, and that's a trend. And there's always been people traveling on the planet, but we are in a time, and when I explain this one to you, in just the last 100 years, we have seen exponential growth in travel, going from basically the same way people traveled for the last many thousand years up to unbelievable mass travel at high speed. So global travel is a sign of the end. Secondly, the global explosion of knowledge. I was just reviewing today the capacity of our computers. You know, and we've gone so fast past mega to giga to tera to peta, and now we're beyond that to the exa and beyond. You know, there are those little or these little prefixes you're going to hear more and more about. In fact, the Wall Street Journal recently talked about the exaflow, that this whole idea that there's so much stuff on YouTube and MySpace and Facebook and all these places that if everybody starts beaming all of their movies and pictures around, it's going to totally overwhelm the internet, because there is such a vast body of information out there that's now measured in exabytes, which is millions of gigabytes, and it's just numbers that are just hard to, so many zeros you can't do it. But there's an explosion of knowledge, and the Bible predicted that.